So I'm here at CRASSH in Cambridge, carrying out archival research for a project called Women at the Dawn of Analytic Philosophy. Analytic is a word that's used a lot in philosophy. And analytic philosophy is a label that's used to describe most philosophy that's happening in the English-speaking world, but not just the English-speaking world. But I think it's quite easy to spend a bit of time doing analytic philosophy, so for example, doing an undergraduate degree, without having it explained to you what that actually means. So I'm going to try and do that. So analytic philosophy is the dominant approach to philosophy in the English-speaking world. As I said, if you're in a philosophy department in the UK, the USA, Australasia, but also many places in Europe and in other places in the world too, you're probably, even if you don't know it, studying analytic philosophy, right? This was my experience doing an undergraduate degree. It wasn't until much later that somebody told me you're doing philosophy in a particular kind of way. Analytic philosophy places an emphasis on clarity and logical reasoning, and analytic philosophers typically think of what they're doing as closer to, say, science and mathematics than art or poetry or literature. Analytic philosophy is about 100 years old as a tradition, and the usual story of its history focuses on men who, at one point in time, what were household names. So this is people like Bertrand Russell, Ludwig Wittgenstein, or A.J. Ayer. Typically, women philosophers aren't part of this familiar story, but they were an important part of this history. And the project that I'm working on, the aim is to shed light on three women who were once central to British philosophical life, but have now been largely forgotten. So those women are Susan Stebbing, who was the first woman in Britain to be a philosophy professor, Margaret MacDonald, who was one of Stebbing's PhD students, and Dorothy Emmett, who was the second woman in Britain to be a philosophy professor.